get ready to rock and roll, people. Let's get this show going today. Episode 2. Remember, getting that technology thing down. Let's get some sharing going on here. Found you. We sharing. Almost there, guys. We at 11:15. Happy 4th. Independence Day, 4th of July. The day you get to set off some fireworks, have a couple cookouts, whatever you classify this day as, congrats for it. For you that are still working, I'm sorry, but have fun. I don't know, speaking of hot dog, hamburger, wherever you work, don't know, but be at the show. All right. And 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome, guys. You guys are part of Coach G's Radical Man Show. And basically, what are we here to do? Help each and every one of you guys be radical. What is radical? Different from what is traditionally known about you. So let's jump into it today, guys. We are celebrating the 4th of July. Happy 4th of July to you guys. Any vets out there, anybody that has family that's ever been part of the military. I know this is all kind of connected, guys. Look, thank you for this day. Enjoy the day. Have fun today. However you're going to deal with the day. If you want to stay inside, great. If you want to get out, hit a pool, beach, great. Hang out with friends, perfect. Let's go ahead and jump into it today, guys. We're talking about manhood, right? Remember yesterday, guys, we were talking about in episode 1 how we're going to spend some time talking about what this page is, of course, designed for, which is to help us out with like that porn side of our brain, right? The things that keep us, sorry, trying to get in the right view here, but the things that just keep us from really concentrating. What is that compulsive habit that we're really trying to break free of, right? And for a lot of us, try to fix this a little bit. There we go, cool. And for a lot of us, we also got to realize is this. We never really got a lot of instruction when it came to being a man. So not only do we got to deal with the porn brain, we got to deal with the man brain that was there way before the porn brain. So we're going to have some great conversations discussing manhood. What is that man brain like? And today what I want to talk with you guys about specifically, independent or dependent. How does that affect our manhood? I mean, think about that for a minute, right? I mean, a lot of us have multiple ways of defining manhood, and I'm willing to bet that for a lot of us, it's things that we picked up along the way. Like we ended up seeing someone who kind of in some way did one of two things. They either showed us what we thought being a man was, or they showed us something so drastically crazy that we said, you know what, I know that's not what being a man is, and yet we still find maybe traces of it in us somewhere along us, right, and how we behave and how we act. So when we talk about manhood, I want you all to understand this when we're discussing manhood. When we're discussing manhood, we're starting to step into your identity. Guys, this is why this is so crucial and so important. If you don't have a sense of your manhood, you can't even begin to get a sense of what your real identity is, who you are as an individual. That starts, yes, it does start with men being a man. You were born a certain way, so that entitles you to being a man. And the key is, how have you learned to define it? Has that definition always worked out for you? And what's happened when we meet that crossroads in our life where the definition of what we knew as a man is all of a sudden confronted with what we're now learning real manhood to be about. So, for me, guys, there are two key points in my life where I remember, like, man, I'm not like a man right now, or I felt like I was somehow less than when my identity as a man really got smashed. Now, the first time it happened when I flipped a car. Yeah, I know, bad. Back in my heyday, guys, like drinking and driving, flipped a car, went to sleep at the steering wheel. I could not be here today, so it's definitely a lot of other ways this could have played out for you guys. But the truth of the matter is that that's what happened, right? Like it was a bad accident. And I remember right after that, I wanted to like not be around anybody. It was the first time I experienced like real shame as an adult, right? I mean, I didn't want to talk to the friends I had left the night before. Didn't want to talk to my parents, even though they had some liability and responsibility, not liability, but responsibility with that vehicle. I had to inform them about it, right? I just stayed hibernated. I was in my house. And I never forget my uncle Draw, favorite uncle. He came by and he was like, George, you got to finally get out of this. Like, you can't hide around all day. And here's the deal. That was good information. Unfortunately, he didn't really tell me how. Maybe that's kind of the same for you guys. You got some good information on what to do as a man, but you never got the steps on how. Like specifically, how do I? Like I know maybe how you did it, but how can I do that exact same thing, right? The second thing that happened when it comes to impacting manhood, guys, was that I had, of course, had this exposure happen in my life, right, with my wife, and she realized like how bad I was dealing with porn at that time. And again, both of those moments, I wanted to just kind of curl up and go away. Like it was one of those things where you want to curl up in a ball and disappear, but yet you're still a man, so you got these other responsibilities that are in play. And listen, when those things come around and you're really being confronted in a position where you have to admit fault and you have to now not just accept help, but now you got to go and seek it. Like that was a real hard part for me. I mean, it was one thing to not have a vehicle. It was another thing to, have to catch the bus. It was a whole nother thing when I had to call a friend or my mom or my uncle to come and pick me up so I can go and pay money on the car that I had damaged or I didn't take care of. It was a whole nother thing when I had to just have a conversation with people that were affected by my damages, right? I mean, it was like just no snapping. It was just that shame that just surrounded me with it. And the thing is that I needed those people. Right? Like I needed those rides. I needed whatever help and assistance I was able to get from them. But it was so much shame around it that I was like, no, I got to be independent. I got to do this on my own. If I got to deal with this much shame, I can't rely on other people. Again, also dealing with porn, coming out, doing porn and drugs, and realizing that, this isn't something I can deal with alone. And let's be honest. As men, for the most part, that's been the biggest thing that we've seen. Like, forget about size. Forget about even where they work, forget about their even sexual preference to a degree, right? For the majority part of us, when we saw a man, we saw someone who was independent, who gave the image, who let us think that, I got everything handled. So we step out and we say that's going to be life. We do everything. We handle everything, right? I mean, heck, I don't care if you play team sports. There's a part of you that says, okay, I have to do this. I. There's nothing wrong with I. Again, first part of independent. I. The problem, though, is that when we can't take the I and know how to help ourselves move into where we have to now be dependent. You see, that we don't really see that a lot as men. And let's just be honest. When a lot of us are dealt with the exposure, when we got to have that moment of coming out, we really look at it initially as one extra thing, what? I gotta fix. All right, so let me get this straight. Maybe I'm generalizing right now, or heck, I won't even generalize. I give you guys my life. All right, so first it's, okay, pay bills, got it. Keep a roof over the head, got it. Take care of the wife, got it. Have kids, got it. Be a decent dad, got it. What else we got to do? Oh yeah, that's right. You got to have that spiritual presence for those of you all who go to church, kind of deal, right? You got to be present in church, right? You don't want to be the man who just never showed up on Sundays if you're involved in church, right? So all these things, I. And then this comes along, and it's like, okay, it's another I. And let's just be honest. A lot of times, our spouses, to the absolute best of their ability, they really don't know They don't know. They don't know what the next step is to be able to deal with this. So they may give you information, and hey, if you had my wife, God bless her heart, it was like, I gotta fix it. And at the same time, she offered as much help as she could, but at the end of the day, it was like, look, this is what you are dealing with. You gotta fix this if you want to save the family. It's gotta be something you do. And the biggest thing that I learned that I had to do in my, again, recovery, I hate that word, but again, in my personal development, what the biggest thing that I had to do in rebuilding relationships, the biggest thing I had to do in becoming someone who now has sobriety on so many levels of my life, who's going to be able to control thoughts, I had to learn how to be dependent. Probably the hardest thing in the world, right? I mean, when we think about independent versus dependent, what really comes to mind? Right? I mean, let's just go and write it out for a minute. Independent, we think about what? Maybe you're strong if you're independent. Right? Secure. Right? What else comes to mind when we think about being independent? Probably means what? Got money. Independent. This is what I love about that independent, right? Somebody can ask you a question and, you're independent, especially if you're like me. Like, I mean, really. Once I hit like 18, 19, 20, really. When I had to move off of campus and I had my first son at age 21 and I'm living in a home and I got to pay bills now and world's really happening right now around me. Yeah, you know what really came through for me? I was Mr. Can Do. Right? How powerful is that, being Mr. Can Do? That means I can do, right? You give me a task, you have an assignment for me, whatever you got for me, I can do. Doesn't matter what the task is now, I can do. Need me to work a full-time job, go to school full-time, take care of the people at home, I can do. Need me to go out here, hang with my friends, do a drink like I used to when I was in my teens and in my 20s, I can do. You need me to go out here and fight 3 guys at the same time and battle the whole world, I can do. You need me to go out here and fix something in the car or whatever the case, right? I can do. All those things. That was so huge for me in being independent. Like, that can-do attitude probably cost me more than what it actually afforded me. Right? But let's go ahead and flip it. Let's flip it, though. What do we have on the opposite end? What do we have when we take a look at being dependent? We got dependee. That sounds kind of bad when I say it, depending, right? Like, depends, almost. Like, and what do we think about? It is so many bad ways they make dependent sound, guys. Y'all realize that? Do you realize that? Think about depends. If your life depends on somebody else, that means, what? The thinking doesn't even go right with that. All right, let's take a look at this. So now, our initial thoughts, and guys, I'm big. I want you guys to give me your first thoughts about this kind of stuff, right? If independent meant strong, then that means if you're dependent, then that means what? You're weak. And if you're secure when you're independent, then being dependent means you're insecure. Can't make a decision. Got to ask somebody for everything. Matter of fact, if you're dependent, probably means you're broke. And of course, last and definitely not least, if that was the biggest thing for me, if I'm dependent, then now I go from Mr. Can Do to Mr. what? Can't do. And that carries so much more weight, doesn't it? Doesn't can't do carry so much more weight than can do? Even though can do sounds great, the fact that you can't do something, I mean, to be able to be limited in such a way. Dependent. How about that, right? Maybe that's another one. You're limited. I mean, if you can't do it for yourself and you need to rely on somebody else, that means you're limited. And conversely, then, if you're independent, that means it's like no limits. I mean, if you look at it like that, it kind of sucks wanting to be what? Dependent. There's no fun in that. There's no joy in that. There's no growth in that, right? But what are we here talking about? We're talking about personal development and learning how to make and break habits, right? That's what this whole thing is about, and how that impacts us on a daily, consistent basis as a man. So let's take a look at this and see how we're going to break through some of these. Let's change our thinking around some of these things, guys. And listen, if you're out there right now, I want you to hop on, shoot me a question, let me know what's going on. You guys need to be a part of this. So dependent. For me, here's the biggest thing that I learned is that it actually requires this right here. Like, we look at a lot of things about being dependent. Weak, insecure, broke, can do, and limited. Now, here's the thing about it, right? Like, dependent, that first thought is like the most horrible of all thoughts when it comes to being dependent, right? Because again, we keep going back to being independent. And independent means that, you know what? I may also have some choices. And I think what we tend to forget is that when we look at what being independent means, right? Here's what independent really means. And I love what we have here, right? Are you strong enough? I want you guys to really make sure you get this down. When we look at what independent really means, are you strong enough? Are you secure enough? Are you at a point when, you know what, it doesn't matter about the finances? And that can do actually shouldn't even have any limitations as well. That can do should be able to stretch. What exactly can you do? And no limits. So let's break this down some more. Are you strong enough to be independent, to be dependent? You see, that was the biggest thing I learned, guys, in being dependent. When I first made that phone call to Craig and I said, look, bro, let's go ahead and get this work in, that was probably the single most solitary, greatest moment of strength I ever exhibited. When I made the decision and say, okay, you know what, this is what needs to happen with my family, and even though they're going to be away from you over 400 miles right now, for me to be able to get done what I got to get done, as well as not hold back my family at the same time, well then, you know what, I had to be secure enough to be what? Dependent. I had to realize that, you know what, it didn't matter how much money I made if that money prevented me from thinking that I could do any one of these things. What can I do? Am I willing to actually be dependent? Is that something I can do? Like, am I independent enough to say, you know what? I can rely on this other person to help me in this endeavor. Now, here's the thing about this, guys. Right now, if you took this, and this is why I say we got to shift our thinking around what you're going through right now, because if this is a business situation, you guys wouldn't have any problem partnering with another individual who's going to make your company's assets grow and build. You wouldn't hesitate at all. You wouldn't care how much money it costs you to join with another person. You'd be strong enough to do it, secure enough to do it if you knew that the bottom line was going to change significantly for you. Like, you wouldn't have any problem at all being dependent. Because at that point, we're talking about career growth. We're talking about career development, financial development. Well, listen, now we're talking about personal development. And this is you, aside from any other area of growth that we got to look at. Before we look at your relationships, before we look at your finances, before we look at your body, before we look at your career, we have to look at you as an individual, that independent, that grown man that you are, and say, I know I'm strong, and I want to stay strong, but am I strong enough to depend on another? Am I really secure enough to get help from another? Does it not even matter about the finances, whether I'm getting coaching or, heck, whether I'm watching this free Facebook Live video? Can I do what it takes to get the help that I need? You see, guys, here's what I want you all to start understanding as men, that if you haven't gotten to the point of being dependent on another, then listen, man, you've never truly been independent. Your thoughts have always been geared about somebody else. Your thoughts have been about what you have experienced in your life that says, you know what? Independent is the only way to go. I'm an island unto myself. And whatever problems come into this island, whether it be sunshine or monsoons, I will be the one that handles it. And listen, guys, that's just not how this world begins to operate for us. It's not how we begin to make the world change for us. You see, I was there. I was that guy that was, you can ask my wife to this day, she still tells you, bless her heart, she'll say, hands down, you're the strongest man I know, right? And I thought that I was so secure, and I thought I was great at making money, and I thought that I could do anything, and I lived a lifestyle that said I have no limits, right? But what it really came down to was George strong enough to be dependent? Was George secure enough to be dependent? Did George not care about what the damage or increase might be financially by being dependent? Did George feel that he could personally do that one thing and rely on another person? Did I feel like I had no limits, or was I so limited that I can't be dependent on another person? Limited in my thoughts and what I was thinking. You see, that's the real battleground for us men. And we got to be the ones to be able to confront it and accept it. Because let me make this very clear for you. There's not going to be another person that's going to be able to help you out in that process. Your spouse can't. I'm sorry. Number one, she's not a guy. She loves you. She knows every part of you. But when it comes to you and your identity, you see, your spouse got with you not because of your level of independence. And honestly, not because of where you were dependent on. Your spouse got with you because of you, your identity, what you presented. And the biggest gap that we have is thinking that our identity was so strong that the moment we start to become dependent, well, now we're starting to show weakness. Right? Guys, listen, I've never been more empowered. Let me help you guys out. That's a word I want you all to walk away from that comes along with being dependent. Dependent is nothing more, when used properly, empowerment. That's it. That's it. Are you strong enough to be empowered? Are you secure enough to be empowered? What are you willing to do to be empowered? What are you going to let limit you? Huh? Time? Distance? Not being able to do something at a certain time? What are the limits you're going to place on yourself that say, you know what? I can't make these steps that are necessary for me to be dependent in my life, or for me to experience a level of empowerment in my life. Again, guys, this is about your manhood. This isn't something your boss is going to give you. It's not something your wife is going to give you. Like her being able to have sex with you in a particular way is not going to solidify your manhood. Your boss speaking to you a certain way is not something that will solidify your manhood. How many houses you can buy and how many pieces of property you can manifest and hold together without having to rely on somebody, that's not going to be what's clear about your manhood. As a matter of fact, your defiance, go ahead and call it out. Your defiance to seek the help necessary because you're so independent that you can handle everything. That doesn't define your manhood. If anything, brothers, it simply defines where you're lacking in your manhood. So listen, guys, let's get ready to wrap up here for today. Happy 4th of July. The day of independence, the day of freedom for the country. And here's what I'm asking each one of you all to do. I'm asking each one of you all out here on watching right now to say this. Can I celebrate my day of independence by being dependent? Can I celebrate my manhood by finding out how I will allow myself to be empowered? Will I celebrate this day of independence for me to figure out, am I strong enough to be empowered? Am I secure enough to be empowered? Am I letting the wrong things like money hold me back from being empowered? Do I feel I can do whatever it takes to be empowered? Am I willing to live with no limits to be empowered? Guys, there's nothing unhealthy about what we're talking about right now. I'm not asking you to live with no limits when it comes to finances. I'm not. I'm not asking you to live with no limits when it comes to your social interactions. Right? I'm not being the guy right now that's saying you must be a part of every social media site. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, what are the limits, guys, to you empowering yourself to assert your manhood? Because at the end of the day, that's all we got. Your job can go. Your family, they can go. Your lifestyle can just disappear, dwindle away. Everything around you can go. Like, I've been there. And the only thing that I left that I had in my hands was just these empty words saying that I'm a grown-ass man and I can handle anything. That got me homeless, guys. Grown-ass man that can handle anything because I'm so independent. It got me without my wife and kids. It got me in a position where I found myself chastising my oldest child for copying my worst behaviors. So men, brothers, let's take that stand today. If you really want to celebrate independence, make a comment and let me know what you're dependent on. Listen, I love you guys. This is Coach G. It's Independence Day. Get out there. Eat good. Realize that there's strength in being dependent. Kick some ass. Peace.